You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Okay. Okay. An auspicious beginning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. We're a little bit late today. I apologize for that. Some tech issues, and I'm knocking on wood fiercely that everything will go smoothly from this moment on. Our very patient returning guest today is Shane Joseph, and I'm your host, Vicky Bennison. Shane is the author of 8 novels, contributes to, writes for, and edits magazines, and is the publisher and editor of Blue Denim Press. His fiction is bold and may make you uncomfortable, but it encourages you to think about some important social issues. With sprinkled moments of compassion and understanding, you'll find yourself asking, excuse me, who is really the monster here? And today's focus book, Victoria Unveiled in Search of Sentience, released in September, continues that lineage, asking the question, and I quote from the back of Shane's book, with chatbots and large language models changing the world of writing and publishing dramatically, what happens when we introduce a sentient robot capable of feelings into the mix? I've been waiting for this conversation since Shane's last visit, and now that I've read Victoria Unveiled, I'm even more eager to get started with it. So thanks, Shane, first of all, for being patient till we got things together, and second of all, for giving my old brain a shake, and welcome to Fika.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And we've got, but before we really get started, can you just let the audience know a little bit about this novel so that they know what we're carrying on about?
Okay. So people have asked me whether this is a sci-fi novel, a thriller, a literary novel, a romance, and I would say it's all of the above. I've talked about it before about the 4 E's of writing. The engage, entertain, educate, and enlighten. And if you can hit all 4 E's, you've got a very good book. So I tried to do all of that in this book. And the 2 E's, the engage and entertain, is in the thriller and the sci-fi aspect, which has a plot that races along with people falling dead at various points. But I think on the other 2 E's, which are harder to achieve, I was trying to delve into the realities of the Canadian publishing industry as it exists today, the realities that we will have to face when robotics starts to intervene and interfere with that industry, and also how would we live with robots if they do attain sentience as people claim they can, and then demand for equal rights, the rights to work a 9 to 5 job as opposed to 24/7, to be paid, to get holidays, to love people like we do, like we do. And when that happens, these are our creations. We put them on the planet. How would we live beside them and with them? So that's the 4th E, the enlightenment question that I had in this book. So in a nutshell, it's a smorgasbord of many things. But I'd like to think that at the end of the book, I'm going to leave people thinking about it and asking questions about the world we live in.
And I think you did very well on all of those things. But I just want to add that I do believe there's an element as a reader of just how much we've become like robots. Not everyone and not everything, but we have been sort of censured into beings that are labeled and told this is the proper way to be. And I mean, that's been happening for centuries, right? So
Yeah, I think what has happened is there's a continuum here where the human in the old days did more of the work and the machine did a little, and then the machine started to do a little bit more and a little bit more, and now on that continuum we seem to be in the minority position where we're getting the machine to do most of it, and that's the same thing in I think the in this book where the robot will ultimately be able to write the book, and then one asks the question, who is the author? Or what has the human author contributed to it? And so that's the challenge that we have, is how much do we allow the robot to do?
And you're already preparing for that because at the front of your book, I
Yes.
note that you write written by a human, the author, AI assisted only in spell check, Grammarly, and read aloud features found on the author's computer. And I think maybe that's what people should start doing.
Yeah. I did that as a pun. I mean, that was supposed to start the book off, but
Just
it is being asked of in, like, if you go to places like Amazon and other publishing platforms, when you put up a book now, you have to tick off a box that says, was this written by AI or was it assisted by AI? Because there's a lot of these AI generated books that are now being put out there. In fact, the other day, a couple of months ago, I had two books that were listed under my name and put on the Goodreads platform that were generated by AI. I was curious. I went in there one day and I found these two books published by me. So I bought one. I thought, let's find out what I've written in my sleep.
were
And it
you
was
expensive?
no, it was actually it was free. That made me even more suspicious. So I downloaded this book and I read it. It was about 50 pages. And it looked like it was somebody's PhD thesis or something they had written. There was completely no humanity in it at all. It was very technical. So I had to write to Goodreads and say, could you please take these two books off my profile? I don't have a problem with them putting my name because, names cannot be copyrighted, but certainly do not put them under my profile. They're not written by me. So with that happening, I can see how intrusive this AI can be, especially in the publishing world, and we have to manage it properly. Otherwise, it can overrun us.
Whereas authors need to manage their pages like for many different reasons, but this is a new one. Like good that you went in there and checked out your Goodreads because otherwise you wouldn't have been aware of that. It is very like recently I went on a rampage because there was a load your e-reader for free. And I've loved to find authors out there that are indie and good and, taking advantage of this. But I ran and I spend a lot of time throwing them over my shoulder after the first chapter. But there was this one book and it just kept repeating like, things like mean girls or just phrases that are out there. And I'm very naive sometimes. And I'm like, this book is driving me crazy. And my son said, it's probably AI.
Yes,
Yes, that's how easily it can come into your life without.
yes, it's very true. But on the flip side, the AI tools are getting smarter. Like, for the instance, the other day, I had a prompt on Facebook that asked me whether I needed to know more about Shane Joseph, and I thought, okay, let's find out. And I asked, and within nanoseconds, there was this big essay about all the works that I have written and so on. Now, there was nothing wrong about it. It was very flattering. I'd never written such glorious stuff about myself before, but it was not untrue. And compared to a few years ago, when you'd ask, people to or ask Google to find things for you on the internet, and sometimes they mix you up with other people with the same name, and a lot of the information is incorrect. But now these tools are getting more refined, and they're getting smarter. So we have to also be aware of what's being written about us by these tools behind our backs, because others may pick this up, right? You sent say a manuscript out to a publisher, he could go and say, okay, tell me more about this author, and quiz his AI tool, and then he gets a whole resume on that author, which may be completely different to what the author has pitched in their resume, and then that creates an imbalance, and one wonders whether the author is leading you on, right? So another facet to contend with now.
And well, it just comes back to these is don't believe what you read on the internet. Like IBM gets people mixed up in the film industry, and they're saying this is this person and things whatsoever. But yes, people will think that you're bragging when you're not. That looks bad on you. There's just so much that we aren't ready. The point is that um we're not ready for social media. There's no social media etiquette that we've learned out there obviously, but also we're not ready for this. The learning curve is just incredible to avoid it if we want to avoid it. And
I call it fact check. Fact check is a very popular word these days, but the only difference is the fact check has been done by a robot.
yes. But what if the robot hadn't? I thought I ran that off. I was just going to bring a couple of them up because how easy would my interview be if I just went through this list? So, Shane, it says that you're inspired by your travels. Where have you been? Like, but I won't do that because it's not, it loses something. But apparently I didn't run it off. So there you go. Okay. But it does, I don't know. I am never going to accept. Now, first of all, Victoria, the robot, I guess we call her,
Yes.
is very advanced. I don't think that we are aware that there's anything that advanced now. This is fiction, but I don't know what's going on out there. They don't tell us everything, so
Yeah, so the difference between Victoria and these chat GPTs and all the people we have is that she is also sensate. She can feel. They have, through huge infusions of data, they have created neural pathways in her brain to rival that of humans, and she is ramping up on her sensory nature. The only difference is that as children, when we start developing senses, we have these base senses like anger and fear and the very basic emotions. And then as we get older and go through many life experiences, we develop compassion and love and empathy and so on. So she's at a rather advanced stage of intelligence and learning. So she knows everything about the world, and she's strong and she's beautiful and all that. But her feelings are still nascent. They are developing, and you can't force those things, right? Even with much data as you pump through. And therein lies the tragic flaw, because we've created this monster. In a sense, we have
is
created
she?
well, she might eventually become a good person, but she's petulant and she's jealous and she's hurtful.
But she's already moved past that by the end of the book.
By the end of the book, yes, she has. But what a trail of destruction has she left in her wake is the sad thing. And she herself begins to feel things like remorse in the end. And that was what I was leading to, is what a tragedy of having developed sensoriness, just to find out that it came at a terrible human cost. And
Okay, so Robin Sims asks, I'll put it up here so you can read it too. Isn't AI is just a very cleverly written computer program that just mimics life or ideas and decisions?
I would say the present generation, maybe, but the intention of these computer scientists is to create a higher level of intelligence. So ones that can intuit what the next move is going to be in a chess game. I think they've already done that with Big Blue and things like that. But who also can make decisions based on feelings, because as humans, we make decisions not just on logic but on feelings.
On
And
passion.
yes, I mean, we saw that happen 2 days ago down in the United States. So we have a combination of feelings that sometimes you could argue is not the right way to go about it, but it plays in our decision making. And I think the intention of these scientists is to make a machine that can do the same thing. And so my premise for this book is, okay, let's not worry about the path to that. Let's assume that the scientists did create this, right? So it's like Gregor Samsa in Kafka's book, The Metamorphosis, woke up one morning and he was a bug. Nobody tried to question how he became a bug. He's just woken up as a bug.
Exactly.
Now let's deal with the fallout from that, right? So that's the premise in which I went to this book. We have a sensate robot in our midst. How are we going to react to her, and how are we going to deal with her? And that's where I wrote this book.
It's fiction, and so you jumped, and it isn't just, to me, like you said, there's all these different aspects to it. There's enlightenment, there's whatever, but even story wise, it isn't just a story of AI. It's a story of the publishing industry. It's a story of passions. It's a story of human flaws and how that's what makes us unique. And just that we're individuality, which does not come with a robot. And those are the things that if we celebrated, something like this may not have the ability to take hold. If we actually, the more we use AI, the more perfect things become, the more we expect things to be perfect. And we're actually not being compassionate or understanding, or, if someone's in a passionate tirade about something and you correct their pronunciation, you can still understand what they're saying. It's sort of like just cutting off their voice. And so I think this is our time to say, let's be human. Let's be compassionate. Let's do all those things that I don't care what they do. I do not think a robot can feel that in any imaginary world.
Not yet.
Shane, we can see, this is the thing.
Because if you read to the last page, you'll realize there's another iteration coming.
Yes.
Robot, right? And we try with every iteration to get better. Usually the first version is a disaster, and then subsequent iterations get better. Like, for instance, even ChatGPT. I mean, nobody in the public used the versions that came before 3.5, right? It was only when 3.5 came out that the scientists decided, yes, it's time to now unleash this upon the general population. And since then, there have been many more iterations that have come that have all been better. So yes, I don't think sensory AI version 1 will be a tremendous success, but it will feed subsequent iterations and help make them better. I don't know where it's going to land and whether we will pull the plug before it lands, because the other thing too is, are we willing to share the planet with these creations? Probably not, right? So we may pull the plug on certain activities and say, no, you can do these things, but you can't do these. This is our domain. So that might happen too.
Okay, so that's a two-part question. First of all, this is a case of the reader going not necessarily by the author's intentions. So Vicky has taken this away from Shane's intentions and is thinking, but there's still that logical part, that machine part because they are machines. Can it ever, like this? Oh, I hate not being able to do spoilers, but say a machine is learning about their emotions. It's not going to make sense to them. So it's going to be more difficult for them as opposed to a human who says, I don't really care. This is how I feel. And this is what's happening within reason. Okay, let's put this out there. Captain Kirk, Spock. Spock never understood. I mean, I prefer Spock, but he never understood how the captain did what he did. So.
And that's true also of Victoria, right? Because she does a few things that we would not have done. And especially when it came to the revenge part of it, it was a mechanical duty. So and so is not good. I'm putting her on my list, and I will make sure that she doesn't survive. And those are the kind of mechanical aspects to her, even though she was developing sensory nature. So you're right; they're not perfect in those areas where feelings are irrational and emotional and don't have any much logic in them. She wasn't very good there, and she failed, as we know. I won't tell more.
But we're not telling them that.
No.
And the second, what was the second point in that? Now I lost it. See, this is why I have notes and I
Let's
didn't
talk
write
about
down.
let's talk about the publishing
Okay,
industry.
people. Okay, we'll go there. Yeah, we'll come back to the families later. Okay, so Shane does talk about the publishing companies in here, and he wants to specifically the Canadian, because he is a Canadian author. But then he's sort of like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said everything I said. Sorry. But he should. He was. I agree with Shane on this one. So, Shane, why did you say the things you said about the publishing industry?
Well, I think that let's leave the robots aside before you introduce them into the mix. But the publishing industry right now, at least in Canada, is at a bit of a crossroads. We have an established order, which was sanctified by governments and grants and a lot of funding, hand-holding, that is aging. It's currently in some kind of a conflict because I see lots of posts on Facebook about the Giller prizes and all that's going on, which has got nothing to do with Canadian publishing. It's political. So they're engaged in those debates. I also saw some statistics recently, which was given out in the Globe and Mail, and also mentioned by a person from within the industry, which talked to the fact that Canadian-owned publishers only own 4.8% of the Canadian book reading market. And I thought that was astounding information. I mean, we've been coddled for 70 years almost as a publicly funded and supported industry. And after all of that, to only have 4.8% of the market is pathetic. And then I also realized that the reason for that is these official statistics don't go beyond into the myriads of micro presses like the one I have, and the myriads of self-published authors who are putting their books out that don't go through any statistical measurements. And then you look at the amount of literary activity that is not documented, right? So in my little town, for instance, we have a literary festival, an arts festival that runs every 2 years, and we have dozens of events. We have book launches, we have anthologies that we produce locally, we have radio shows, we have a whole bunch of literary activity that's going on that's not in the official numbers. And so I said, on the one hand, you have the traditional industry, which is getting smaller and smaller. And then on the other side, you have a burgeoning unofficial industry. And I reflect those in the two characters, Art, the old guy who's running this little press that's running itself into the ground, and his daughter, who is the young editor,
Paula,
who is the new generation, who's saying, self-publishing is okay, charging people money for the work you do for them is okay, and even robots maybe are okay. So I wanted to bring those two realities into this book, and then what's the fun? And then I thought, okay, just for even more fun, let's throw this robot who comes in and says, I'll write a book in 30 days and have it printed and published and out there. And then what's that going to do to the industry? So that's also an important, I think, piece in this book to see how that played out. I mean, it had some tragic events, consequences, of course, but that was what I wanted to bring out, because I'm in this industry, and usually they say, write what you know. And so I thought, okay, I will place this book in my industry and see what happens. Now, for the most part, I'm thinking this book will be ignored by the official guardians. But I think the ones who are in the emergent and larger, indie sector might find this book of use, because it does talk about the realities that they are living in and that they're going to be facing.
Are you feeling a little like Kevin in this then? Your character Kevin, that I'll write this book, but they're not going to read it anyways.
Yeah, I like that guy. He said it. He said a lot of things that I had wanted to say. In fact, I'd written an essay about fragmentism, about how this industry is so fragmented and how artists are being fragmented because we are expected to do multiple things, right? We're supposed to write our books, publish our books, promote our books, go on multiple channels, make videos like this. And we're supposed to be good at everything. And we're jacks of all trades and sometimes masters of none. And so this is the reality of the industry. And then I contrasted it against traditional authors like John le Carre, for instance. He was a guy who would write a book, send it off to his publishers, and the moment the book came out, he was off on holidays for 4 or 5 months, not to be seen, because it was not his job to promote the book. It was his publisher's job to promote the book. That was the old world. And so in this world, we are expected to do it all. And the technology is also fragmenting us into different forms, because now you have vlogs, video blogs, right, where you're supposed to write a bit and film a bit. You have TikToks, you have tweets, you have Facebook posts, you have Instagrams, and these are all different forms of different length. And you could basically take, for instance, my book. I could put it into all of those forms in a different format and still get the same central idea across to those different audiences. And we're expected to do all that. And that's why I call it fragmentism. And that's why Kevin was up there on his platform talking about it.
Yes, I'm Team Kevin. Okay. I would like, even though he's a fictional character who wrote a fictional book, I would like to read that fictional book. But it doesn't exist. And neither does Kevin, unfortunately. The point is it's all anti-intuitive to the reading and writing lifestyle. First of all, I would say a lot of writers are observers and therefore a little more introverted in their behavior. The idea that they have to get out in front of people and talk is just terrifying enough for them. And two, readers are reading books. Hopefully they're not like spending all their time on social networks picking up all this information. That being said, I know some indie authors that have just done amazingly well on those things and have done everything possible, holding their children and saying, feed my baby, like whatever it takes to get it moving. So it is a strange new world.
Yeah, and the other thing too is to keep in mind is that when we started off in social media back in the early 2000s, it was a fashionable thing to have a lot of followers and friends and promote yourself to them. And if you posted something, the chances are that all of them probably saw it. That's not happening anymore. I think the social media platforms are voluntarily, forcefully suppressing how much content gets out there, because there's a lot of content. And the only way you can get to audiences now is if you advertise. And I have done both. I've done posts that I think are provocative and maybe I'll get 50 likes. And I've done advertising where I paid money. And the money is not that much. $30 or $40 for a week of advertising. And you can hit 7,000, 8,000, or sometimes 10,000 views. So that's the split between the old free posts versus the paid posts, right? And so that's how they make money. So people need to be aware of that having so many followers and friends. I counted my followers and friends the other day on all the platforms, and I had 14,500, and I was pretty pleased with myself. And I sent it on to an agent who's representing some of my work, and he said to me, "Well, you just made a start," because that's.
And it's getting harder and harder because people are getting more blasé about the entire thing. So it's getting more and more difficult you have to really know what it is that your followers want. But no, people don't get that. A lot of the things, and especially if you have a business page, which is what you want to promote, it might get to 11% of the people. And some of them, they don't even put out there, I know, because as soon as they put on the bottom of my post, boost this by whatever, I know that it's going nowhere. And so you have to do things like, yes, people, I will like my own post because it at least gets it a little further out in the algorithms. And if I say Shane's going on the show, I love it anyways because Shane's coming on the show. So I'm loving my post because this is making me happy. So there are all kinds of tricks and things that they don't. I mean, at this point of time, because what I do, my Facebook page is pretty much covered with books, book advertisements. But you know what? I don't care. I kind of like book advertisements, so I'm in there checking them out. But it is more and more difficult every day, more and more expensive every day, with what people and more and more difficult because this platform won't promote anything that you share from another platform, and it's an entire.
But let me give you some hope, or give whoever
Oh no,
offers
I
something.
have hope.
Let me give you some hope. I've said this at many meetings and writers' conferences that I've been at, and people look at me.
Okay. Shane, can you hear me? I'm just having a little bit of trouble here, people. I have no idea. I think we should stop talking about the publishing industry because they're. Yeah, that's not working. Okay, but if I take. Okay, is it the headphones? Is it. Shane, keep talking to the people while I I do this. I don't know what to do here. I can't hear anything. Okay, can you hear Shane? Okay, Dave, can you hear me? Okay, so we can't hear Shane. So it's not my headphones. I don't see you muted anywhere, Shane. Okay, so we can't hear Shane. Shane, can you hear me? Okay, we can't hear Shane. Okay. Well, we're just waiting to figure out what is going on because you know what? This is live. This is adventurous. These happen. I don't see him unmuted in any way. So we're just having some mic problem then, I guess, on your end. I don't see any problems here. No mutes. No. Okay. Okay. If you want to tell me something, just chat it. Okay. Okay, he's going to try something. He's a clever guy. And he's going to Okay, 1 minute. 1 minute with Shane. All right. So I'm just going to write see, sometimes it's not you. I usually have it. So I'm going to just read the beginning here, the prologue. I think that's okay. I can't get his permission. So, and I think this is a fabulous piece of writing. Okay, there's Shane back. All right, let's bring him in.
All right.
Okay, we're perfect. So I promised them while you went away for a little bit just to read them the beginning of the prologue because it's a beautiful piece of writing, I think. Is that okay with you?
Sure. You want me to read that?
Do
All
you
right.
read it or do you want me to read it?
I can do that.
Okay, you read
I'll
it.
read that. So this is the prologue. This sort of sets you up for the what's to come. She was born of the fruit of digital programming in a humming, thrumming laboratory where masked and gowned scientists trying to protect themselves in a pandemic-ridden world worked on every nanoparticle of her being. She had to function flawlessly. Flawed humans creating a flawless being, a flawed strategy. She came into being at a time when humans had given up on the climate they messed up, when war had still not been eradicated, no poverty, no greed, nor the thousand natural ills that flesh was heir to. She was to be the leapfrog in human evolution. If we cannot perfect this mortal coil, let's build the next best thing. Her creator looked upon his creation with pride. He had imbued her with all his knowledge and given her incredible mental and physical strength, coupled with beauty. For the endurance needed to survive, be noticed and respected by humans, and not be treated as another circus freak. The whirring stopped, and the figure on the white bed rose and looked upon her creator, and he swelled with pride. "You are indeed perfect," he said. "I shall call you Victoria." And with that, Phil Kruger, creator of the first sensate robot in North America, ordered champagne for his team of developers, while Victoria looked on, ignored.
And I just think that's beautiful. Can I put that on my social media or
Sure.
can I quote that?
You
Because
could.
I think it leads in so beautifully with what you've written, Shane. It is a good book on so many levels, and we can't even discuss. I swear I need to start a private book club for like people who've read the book, and then we've gone on to discuss it with people. Okay, so Shane, we need to move on.
Yes.
We've had our share of problems You can come back anytime if you want to talk more about any of these issues, because I think they're really worth delving into. Is what are you working on now? It's not I just a
Yes.
second. I am being told I like the book just because I'm called Victoria. No. Although I do feel like I misunderstood and don't quite understand all my emotions at times. Okay.
So what am I working on now? I'm working on a fourth book in a historical fiction series. Um, I've written three, and they're not published yet. They're being they're being marketed through an agent. But the fourth book, the idea came to me when I was recently in Switzerland, of all places. I'm in a museum in Zurich, and I read this article about the Demiron Regiment, which was a regiment my ancestor was attached to. It fought in various places. It was a Swiss mercenary regiment that fought in different countries for the Dutch and for the British and so on. And I didn't know that they had fought in India, and they had fought a very famous battle there. I do know that they subsequently came to Canada and fought in the War of 1812. Now, my ancestor wasn't part of that Canadian conflict because he demobilized in Ceylon, and so my whole ancestry then continued in Ceylon until I came to Canada, almost 40 years ago. If he had stayed with the regiment, I may have been a sixth generation Canadian. That's how the world changes. But he fought in India, and so I'm going to India to research that part of the world. I've been in India before, but not in that particular part. And so I'm going to research that. The travel is going to be part of the writing. It's the fun part, and hopefully a book will come out of that. And
Well, I'm very excited about this because first of all, I love the fact that you have already 3 books into this series before we've read one, because we're not waiting years between the different books, right?
well, no, we don't. But the reason is also because this was commercial fiction in many respects. I think it doesn't have all 4 E's. It may have 3, 3.5, perhaps. But it is it's something that it's a passion project. I started the first book in France during the Reign of Terror. The second one is in South Africa during the time of the British takeover from the Dutch. And the third is set in Sri Lanka and the Maldives, which is also around the time when the Dutch Empire collapsed. And so the fourth will be in India. And then the fifth, I could go anywhere. So wherever this character wants to go, I will go because I travel to all those places to do my research. And so it's you could argue, is this a personal, as I say, passion project, or is it something that will result in a series that hopefully people will get to read someday? But you never know.
So this is not something you would take on to publish yourself.
No, I mean, I could, but I don't want to do it. I think it has a bigger appeal than just my press putting it out. I think it needs to be read by a wide audience because it does talk about colonialism, and it talks about conquest, and it talks about the good and the bad. And also it talks about survival, because I think in that time, people fought a much harder survival battle than we do
Yes.
today, right? So, and we came from those generations of people. So I think some of that survivability rubs off in us.
Well, definitely. I think back to caveman time, the strongest, the all of those things. It's not really fair to reach back into the past and judge them on what is happening now in the world. First of all, they didn't have internet, so they didn't know what was happening in the rest of the world at that time and had less choices. But I think that you in your writing do a good job of seeing all the perspectives. And I see that in Victoria, the different types of people. Um, the passionate family who's appear to be chaotic, but this is where growth happens, and they're not, and the very logical, business-like family, and who would we like to spend our time with? Well, I'm going with the passionate family and Kevin and all that chaos happening over there, because that is truly human, and it is a really good book, people. It's not it's not all about the robots, as I've said before. It's a very feeling, touchy book. There is sometimes that, and there's surprises. Like Shane will have a female say something in her head, and I think, would a female really say it that way? But then I think, I don't know all the females and how they think, so I can only say whether this female would say it that way or not. So you question a lot of things in
But
Shane's
then
book.
herein lies the rub, though, because we are always trying to relate. I think it's a present generation thing where we're trying to relate our fiction to reality. We like realist fiction, and even more than fiction, we want our fiction to be realist. And I think there's the flaw, because when you look at the great writers like Salman Rushdie and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I mean, they wrote magic realism, things that are fantastical, and they ask you to suspend belief. And we have to, when we create characters, we need to make them larger than life. They should be doing somewhat outlandish things that we wouldn't as normal people do. What's the point in reading about normal people? It's boring, right?
But
So
who
so
are you
that's
calling normal?
I'm talking about average day-to-day middle-class people, because we are very circumscribed in the way we conduct our lives. We are politically correct, and we are polite to people, and we don't like to hurt people's feelings, and so on. If you have a bunch of people like that in a book, it will be completely boring, and no one will want to read it, because that's
Well,
life.
no, no.
So you have to have outlandish people who do some really wacky things, who break some norms, because we are curious. We are always curious about the other, who does things that we are reluctant to do. And so those are the people that attract us in the pages of a book, right?
And there's no saying that people don't think like that. Just I don't. So we can't make judgment calls on the whole world, as you say, on us. And two, you always have some kind of Easter egg in there with names and things. And so I'm reading this and I'm seeing Artemis and Diana, and I'm probably way off pace here. But then I think of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, which is Diana, in Wonder Woman. Is there any, was
Yes,
that meant?
there were some things that were deliberate. So, for instance, Artemius, shortened to Art, right?
Right, exactly.
He's
Art.
an
I got
artist.
that part too.
Yeah, and so I tried a little bit of that. Victoria came to me because Victoria was the queen who ruled the waves, and this woman is supposed to do that. And yeah, so I sometimes play with some of those names. Um,
Is
it's
there more I haven't got yet? Because I'm playing the game with you, Shane.
No, I mean, some of them I kept them as straight names. For instance, the Smith and the Smyth thing was a play on the guy trying to be posh. I think sometimes we adopt posh names to impress people. And he's a consultant. He's breaking into consulting. He wants to get away from a traditional SMITH to a SMYTH. You know, put an
So we
affectation.
take those two gentlemen that are close in age. And once I say passion, those that are more, I want to make money and things. And so Art's last name is Jones, which is a very common name. And his last name is Smith, which is very common. But Art's okay with Jones
Yes,
because he's unique in himself. He doesn't
yes,
have to have a label to say,
yes.
but Mr. Smith has to change it to Smythe with the Y and be different.
And Paula's two lovers, if you notice, one is this highly rational, he does everything to a plan. And the other guy is all emotion and gushing all over the place. And those are the kind of worlds that Victoria, in a subtle way, has to navigate, right? Between
Exactly.
rationality and emotion. So, yeah, I threw those in, and I was hoping the reader will get some of those connections and the symbolism there. But
I do. So do I get a gold star in the mail or um, no,
with
I'm
all
not.
the interruptions we had, I just don't know how much of what I was saying got registered with people. So you let
We
me
can
know.
do this again if you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to try it. Life, like I said, is live. Or you can send me that book you promised to send me last time. And
Yeah,
then we can do Victoria, that book.
yeah. I think let's do that. That might be better
Okay.
because then I can we can talk about two books and we can cover some of the holes in this. And I will listen to the recording here and pick up on the pieces that were left out because of the technical difficulties.
And yeah, no, I'm sorry. I just immediately blame myself. So I'm like, what is wrong with my headphones? The audience was just waiting patiently. I'm going to have to speak to them about that. Don't wait patiently. Tell me who you can't hear. I don't know. So we can find Victoria and the search for sentience in the usual places.
The usual places where all good books are sold. So on all the online stores, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Indigo, and then also on, I guess, your local bookstore. You can order the book from there. It will be delivered. It's not racked widely. And remember, we are an indie publisher, so we don't have our books in by the thousands at Chapters standing out the windows. But you could order it from the Chapters online store, and they will deliver it to you. So
So you
it's
just go and
available.
pick it up.
It's available. I mean, if you're looking for ebooks, I mean, it's in Kobo and Apple and Kindle formats. You can just one click and it's downloaded to your e-reader, right? So that's the fastest and probably the cheapest.
And a good read, and makes you think, and shakes those little brains out. If you're
Somebody
like,
said, is it hardcover or soft? It's a trade paperback, so I would say more on the soft cover side. But it's not your airport read 5x8 book. It's 6x9 glossy cover. So it resides somewhere between hardcover and soft cover, but more on soft.
yeah, I mean, most of them are in one way or the other. I don't.
I have the book up here. I can hold it up.
Oh, we should have done that before.
I know the Beauty and the Beast. If you,
I can't cue on everything, and my I like the colors because they do have colors, and that's my whole point with colors around here. It's not just white, it's not just black, it's not even just gray. It's colorful. It's all colorful. So thank you, Shane, and we'll work out another date. I'm kind of like booked till Christmas, but we'll get into the new year. Okay? I really appreciate your coming.
Thank you
and
very
your
much for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Okay, now let's get through before anything else happens. Next week, we will be having author Jeff Van Zandt, and he'll be joining us with his ghostly tale, The Dance of Rotten Sticks. It takes place in an old cottage on a secluded island, so what can go wrong? And I'll save the rest of it till next week. But I'm really looking forward to that. And I also know there's a sequel coming up for that one too, because I asked because I was so involved. Remember, if you like this episode and everything we were just talking about, you can find out more about what's coming up if you follow Fika with Vicky on Facebook and Blue Sky. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Until then, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone.